Hi, this is Emerald and welcome to the Diamond Net, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the purpose of spiritual teachers. Alright, so this topic of the purpose of spiritual teachers I think is very important to talk about to anybody who is actively trying to seek enlightenment or is actively on the spiritual path. Because the spiritual path has many different phases to it. And one is a phase where spiritual teachers are important and are helpful. But then there's another phase where if you get to that phase, then spiritual teachers can actually hinder your progress. And so I wanted to make a video about what the actual purpose of a spiritual teacher would be whenever you're on the path. So a bit about my background is when I first had my experiences of ego transcendence, that was kind of almost like my initiation. Before that, I didn't have any knowledge or interest in spirituality, and I really didn't even know what to call any of the things that I had experienced. And then several years later, I found Jungian psychology, and a lot of the Jungian authors that I used to, read a lot about, a lot of their work. All of their stuff really resonated with me a lot at the time. And I really immersed myself in that content for probably about a year, where I was just constantly reading some kind of book that related back to Jungian psychology or the subconscious or how the psyche works. And then after about a year of that, I found that every time I would open up a book on the topic, I just couldn't make myself read it anymore. It was like I wasn't really getting anything out of it. It was like I was going over the same grounds. When before, when I would read it, I would feel this very clear sense of expansion and like, yes, this makes perfect sense. And those aha moments would pop up. And I felt like I was making progress. But then when I got to that point, I was like, okay, well, I guess this was pointless. That was always what I felt like at that point in time after that year of really fully immersing myself in it. I was like, well, this didn't get me anywhere. And then several months later, I found several other teachers, and then I found almost like a deeper way to go into things. And so being on the path, in a lot of the phases, it's a lot about resonating with certain types of spiritual content, and then not maybe resonating with that anymore and finding a more appropriate teacher, resonating with that teacher, and then, just continuing that process of letting go what was before and moving on to what's new. Now, in the past 2 years for me, I haven't really resonated with anybody's content. I haven't really, been resonating with any kind of spiritual teacher or what they're saying. It always feels like they're telling me something that I've already gone over. I feel that same sense of rehashing the same material over and over again. So I don't feel that sense of expansion and that sense of like aha moments that I used to get when I would listen to spiritual content. And so this has gotten me thinking about, okay, what is the actual function of a spiritual teacher? And at what point does that function become obsolete? So for me, what I've noticed about spiritual teachers is that their function is to tell me things that I already know deep down, but to be able to put it into words in a way that I can grasp it better. So when I had my experiences of ego transcendence, one of the most profound insights that I had was that I already knew every single piece of wisdom that I could ever hope to know. So every insight that I could ever get from divine wisdom was already there. I just had lost access to it. I didn't have a connection to it. But then it was just really clear, oh, I already know all of this stuff somehow. I didn't need to learn it. It was already there. It always had been, and I knew it always would be. And so, with listening to different spiritual teachers over the course of, several years, they would tell me things, and there was always this sense of, aha, yes, I knew that. I just didn't know that I knew that. And so I think that that's a very important function that a spiritual teacher has in that sense, is they tell you things that you already know, but that you didn't know that you already knew. And a lot of the function of a spiritual teacher is not to teach you things. It's to make you realize things that you've already known, and then also to make you aware that you don't really know anything. So there's always this process of elimination that's going on. Like, oh, you once believed that this is the case. Well, technically you don't already know that. That's actually just been a belief the whole entire time that's based on very little other than assumption. And so that's another function of a spiritual teacher, is to help you unlearn beliefs that are not based in your experiential truth. Another function of a spiritual teacher can be to actually guide you into the processes that, would help you sort of get to, I guess, the next stage that I'm about to talk about, where the teachings aren't really that important, but more so on the intellectual level, where you're just realizing things and realizing those things are helping you let go of falsehood. So, like a spiritual teacher might also, be helping guide you through some kind of yogic practice or meditation or something of that nature. But for my purposes, I've never had anybody that actually did that. I never had a spiritual teacher that was like, okay, here, sit and do this. And it was never a face-to-face thing. It was always remote, like listening to videos or, reading books or something of that nature. And so, in a sense, that can be still a very valid reason to have a spiritual teacher throughout the entire path. But when it comes to the intellectual side of things, where it's mostly about like the spiritual teacher telling you things that you already know, and then in telling you those things that you already know, allowing you to abide in not knowing and realizing that, oh, all of this is groundless and doesn't really have anything for sure. So any kind of spiritual teaching that you've learned, that you've already known, is essentially, you have to take some of it based on faith, because if you boil any belief down to its like bottom belief that it's sort of scaffolded upon, you realize that, it's all built on nothing. It's like building castles in the sky. And that's true of any kind of human belief or framework, because that's the limitation of the human intellect. And so at this point, a spiritual teacher, in the sense of telling you things or guiding you through mindsets and helping you unlearn things, once you've already unlearned and once you've already seen through all of that, all of this spiritual content is going to be very repetitive. And at that point, it becomes a distraction. So again, let's go back to our map metaphor that I had mentioned before. So a spiritual teacher kind of functions in a sense like a map would function. And again, your goal is to get to the point where X marks the spot. So all of the intellect-based teachings that a teacher might give you, it's just meant to get you to that point where X marks the spot, but it doesn't actually help you dig. And so if you're already at that point where X marks the spot, and then you keep trying to refer to the map, well, the map has become useless at that point because you're already at your destination. So if you've been feeling like, oh, I listen to spiritual teachers, but it's just kind of to make myself feel better or to distract myself, and I already know this stuff, and there's not that sense of aha and expansion, then it's time to switch gears from something that's very cerebral and intellectual to something that's a lot more, I guess, close to home, in the sense of being actually focused on being here in the present moment, and the meditative aspect of being still and sitting and just realizing what's actually been in front of you the whole entire time. And this becomes a very difficult task to do because, in a sense, the intellectual aspect of spiritual work, where you're learning and you're unlearning and you're realizing things, that's a very active process that takes all of your focus. But if you don't have something to focus on, and if you don't have, some kind of overarching goal, and you're just sitting there still and you're just trying to be with what is, then this can become a problem, because feelings of emptiness and feelings of boredom can come up. And these are very, very hard for people to bear, especially for people who are maybe more cerebral naturally. People who kind of feel at home in the intellect might have a hard time switching gears, as I've had a hard time switching gears myself, from the more intellectual aspect of the spiritual path to the more experiential aspect of the spiritual path. So The main takeaway here is that if you find yourself listening to spiritual teachers and you're no longer getting that sense of expansion, and you're no longer resonating with them, and you're no longer getting those aha moments, then it's time to switch gears on the path. It's not that what you've learned hasn't been incredibly valuable, and it's not that what you've unlearned hasn't been incredibly valuable. The mind has to be cultivated in a particular way to be open. But once you have your mind cultivated in that way, to continue to do that is just overkill. It doesn't add anything to it. And at this point, you have to listen to what your emotions and your intuition are telling you. If you're listening to spiritual content and you're still feeling like, yes, this is awesome, and you're still able to resonate with particular spiritual teachers, and that's great, continue to do that. But if you're just in the situation and you feel like you're going through the motions and you're hashing and rehashing things that you already know, at that point, that's the time to switch gears, because at that point, spiritual teachings have become obsolete to you. And so in a sense, it's an uncomfortable transition to make, but it's actually a very good sign of progress. There are very few road signs on the spiritual path, but that's a clear road sign that you can see that, oh, I've already gone through that phase of the process. Now it's time for me to switch gears. I've gotten to this point. Now, also, don't lie to yourself and say, oh, well, I don't resonate with spiritual content because I'm further along on the path and I've made progress. If you're still resonating with spiritual content, continue to watch it. Or continue to read it or do whatever. But if you feel like you're just going through the motions, that's a clear sign that it's time to switch gears. Anyway, so that's all I have for you for now. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead, click the like button below and subscribe. Also, leave me a comment down below. I love hearing from you guys. I also wanted to say thank you so much to my patrons. You guys really keep me motivated to keep making videos. And then also, if you would like to become my patron in exchange for rewards, I have a link down below in the description box. I'm also offering life coaching. And right now I'm just kind of getting my feet wet with it, so I'm not charging a really high price, compared to what life coaches would normally charge, because I'm learning the ropes. So if you would like to, in a sense, get some cheaper life coaching in exchange for helping me learn life coaching, then you can also check out my Patreon page, and I have details on there. There are 2 tiers. You can either get 1 appointment per month, and you can also get 2 appointments per month. So one's called Be My Guinea Pig, and the other one's called Guinea Pig ×2. So check those out. But anyway, that's all I have for now, and until next time, keep becoming more you.